Right, good evening, members, officers, member of the public. Welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting. Fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, vacate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones and do not make or receive calls while the meeting is in progress. Please note the meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and will be subsequently broadcast on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? The following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item 4, Councillors Rattigan, Davis and Rogers, and Item 5, Councillor Pugh. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Austin?
6 and 7, please, Leader, just for balance. 6 and 7.
6
please.
and 7.
Thank you.
So we get a complete set. Thank you. Okay. Members, we're all here, so there are no apologies. Does anyone have an interest to declare in the items of business on the agenda this evening? No. Minutes of the previous meeting. To approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet meeting held on the 21st of September 2023, copy attached to the agenda pack. I propose to take the minutes as read. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Yates. Members agree? Thank you. Item 4 is the 2024-25 draft budget. To introduce Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Leader. I am very pleased to be able to present a balanced budget for 24-25 to Cabinet tonight. The budget setting process began this summer and Cabinet and officers have dedicated a tremendous amount of time and effort to get to the position where we are now. My thanks go to all those involved and contribution to the process to date. The next stage in the process is to consult with residents on our draft budget proposals within our annual resident survey. This will run for 6 weeks through November into early December. After carefully listening to our residents, the Cabinet will return next year with our final budget proposals to recommend to Council for approval. Despite what may seem like a lengthy and complicated process, this level of planning is of critical importance. It's how we continue to deliver the services that matter most to the people and protect and support our most vulnerable residents. Within this draft budget, we're proposing to increase our net spending on local services by 2.2 million. This is a significant increase. Some of this is due to inflationary pressures as the District Council continues to face the same cost increases as everyone else on fuel, on transport, on pay, and this has to be funded. Inflation remains high and the current economic climate makes it difficult to predict the future. Over and above these inflationary pressures, I'm proud to be presenting a number of proposals to invest in some of our Council's key services, which makes a real difference to local people. On the General Fund budget, we are glad to be spending more on priorities such as investing in our parks and open spaces and recruiting of more street cleansing staff. This investment has been prioritised to some of the service areas that we know matter most to our residents. When preparing this budget, we have also made sure we're spending our money wisely and in a way that is clearly aligned with our proposed corporate priorities, as set out in the report tonight. Despite the fact that inflation is running around 6.7%, the Council is only allowed to increase the council tax by a maximum of 3%. The proposed 3% increase in council tax at £7.64 for a Band D equivalent property represents an increase of less than 15 pence a week for each household. Therefore, we continue to look to optimise our local income so we can improve and provide quality services for local people. We're doing this by optimising key income streams by applying inflation-linked increases to our charges for services. The Council has a substantial capital programme to deliver over the next 4 years through ongoing levelling up fund projects for both Margate and Ramsgate and the Margate Town deal. These funds provide the opportunity for significant investment in the district, and the impacts on the budget are set out in the draft capital programmes for 2024 to 2028. But it's not just regeneration. We're investing in our assets right across the wide range of services we provide for our residents and visitors. With £1.5 million allocated for Mill Lane car park refurbishment, in addition, we'll continue to electrify our vehicle fleet and invest in charging infrastructure, and we're putting solar panels on the leisure centres and decarbonising our property estate to meet our climate change targets. Lastly, but far from least, we are proud to be making further investment in order to provide additional temporary accommodation to meet the needs of homeless people, with a plan to spend £8.4 million over the next 4 years, which will help provide more temporary housing within our district for some of our most vulnerable residents. and we believe in the long run this will be beneficial to the Council's finances, as it will reduce our spend on temporary housing accommodation. So, I move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Is there a seconder? Councillor Alban, thank you. And speaking of the 20.1, Councillor Rattigan.
Good evening. Just a couple of questions on the new capital projects, the decarbonisation of the TCC building and the innovation centre. We did look at one point before that we may not obviously stay in these offices, and they may move. Would it be wise to spend that sort of money out if we were planning to move premises in the near future? And also with the innovation centre, the amount needed to spend on it compared to the revenue that it brings into the council, is it sort of balanced?
Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. I'm just going to refer you to Chris Bundell, one of our officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for the question. In terms of the current building, it's clear we need to determine what the long-term future is for this building, but to decarbonise it, not just this building, but across our estate, we're going to be reliant on trying to get external funding, most likely from the public sector decarbonisation fund, and we'd be applying that to this building and also to the Kent Innovation Centre, rather than actually taking on borrowing or undertaking the use of reserves to finance that required expenditure. So the rationale for that means that there's not a drain on the council's finances in order to meet those objectives, because it clearly is a large undertaking, as you can see by the scale of the works that are required. So these items, as it's set out in the report, really are to be viewed as a placeholder at this moment in time. It's our ambition to decarbonise these buildings in order to meet our climate change targets. However, we are reliant on attracting and being successful in being awarded those decarbonisation funds in order to make that happen.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. I think it's to be complimented in the current situation that we have a balanced budget, and congratulations to all concerned, and I'm very pleased to hear it. There are one or two questions that I have regarding items within the budget and why they're there. We have certain items, for example, dredging, which apparently has been left at Ramsgate Harbour and now is vital for larger vessels. I'd like to know if those larger vessels have been identified, where they're coming from, when they're due to dock, and why we are spending £180,000 of borrowed money speculatively. Thank you.
Mr Humber would like to respond on dredging, because I suspect he's our expert.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, so there's a £180,000 provision from next year for port and harbour dredging, and this isn't capital dredging, this is maintenance dredging to make sure that we can continue to maintain the approaches, maintain the fairways, maintain the dredged depth, and it will be to accommodate all vessels, whether they are existing or new larger vessels. The dredging budget was reduced a few years ago in order to maintain dredging to the depth that we need to continue to accommodate existing vessels as well as potentially new vessels. We need to increase the budget, and that's what this is for.
Could I just clarify, because several years ago we dropped 750,000 out of the budget, which was the port readiness budget, because there were no vessels arriving and it was decided that we were wasting £750,000 a year. It was taken out of the budget. Surely if that budget but it was then held in abeyance, is that money still available? And if so, why are we spending an additional 180,000? Because if we've got a port readiness budget, why do we need to borrow money to do that?
So, yeah, the saving that was made 4 years ago now, no, that money isn't saved. That money isn't available in the reserve to use for this or anything like that. That was part of the savings made for the to balance the budget at the time. We undertake hydrographic surveys 3 times a year. If you care to look over those over recent years, you will see that there is a gradual accretion. There's the gradual shoaling of the dredged depth in the turning circle, in the approaches, particularly around the entrance to the... And that's despite spending all of the dredging budget to maintain the depth for safe navigation. There simply isn't enough money in the budget to continue to do that, and that's why this increase has been put in there.
Okay.
Councillor Davies,
sorry.
Can I just be clear? This isn't a dialogue.
My apologies, I forgot that. Got carried away.
Okay. Can I move on to Councillor Rogers then, please? Oh, sorry, did you want to come in, Councillor?
Yeah, just to add a bit of context. So as per, I think it's 4.19 in the report, the money, the £180,000 will be spent from reserves. And the future port project will actually reimburse those reserves once it's up and running. So that's, just wanted to add that clarification. Thanks.
Councillor Rogers?
Thank you, Leader. In a similar vein, £50,000 of borrowing has been allocated for refurbishment of the Dockmaster's office and £70,000 of borrowing for ladder refurbishment. Firstly, can I confirm that the Dockmaster's office is a fiberglass porter cabin sitting on the West Pier, and if so, how such a large cost of refurbishment has been arrived at? And secondly, which ladders does the £70,000 of borrowing refer to, and exactly what does this refurbishment involve? If it's the ladders located around the piers, aren't they banned from use these days? Thank you.
I think that's probably a question for Mr Humber as well.
Thank you. Yes, so it's the Dockmaster's office on the west crosswall, which is the other office I think you're thinking of is the security hut, the security office. The office they've got has got no drying facilities. It's poorly heated. If you happen to go in there, you'll see it's fairly small and not not in particularly good condition. So it's about providing our staff with good facilities and proper welfare. So that's what that project is for. The ladders project is on the East Pier, and it's making sure that we've got safe ladders for access and for exit on the inside of the pier. The ladders are protected by large bulk timbers either side of them to stop vessels from causing damage when they berth, and hence the cost of the work. But it is for replacement ladders to replace the existing ones there.
Thank you. Members, anything further to say on this item at this stage? No? Okay. So it's been moved and seconded that the proposed budget consultation be approved for publication, the draft 2024-25 General Fund Revenue Budget be considered and noted, and the 24 to 28 General Fund Capital Programme be considered and noted. Do members agree? Agree. Thank you. We move on to item 5, which is the extension to the public space order for protection order for dog control. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Leader. Thanet District Council is committed to improving the environment and improving community safety. Directly relating to this commitment is the Council's ability to address antisocial behaviour and related complaints. Public space protection orders are a valuable tool excuse me, to allow councils and partners to tackle behaviours that can have a detrimental effect on the quality of life in the locality. The Thanet Dog Public Spaces Protection Order was originally implemented in 2017 and extended for a further 3 years in 2020, and continues to be an important aspect in maintaining quality of cleanliness on Thanet's beaches and protection of our coastline, cemeteries and playgrounds. The order has helped protect the diversity of bird populations and wildlife at Pegwell Bay, and is also part of our Blue Flag and Seaside Award beach status. I would therefore like to recommend that the Cabinet exercises its power under the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014 and agree to a further 3-year extension to this order.
Thank you, Councillor Keane. Just for clarification, I think it's also to delegate any minor amendment of the PSPO to the Chief Executive.
Oh, yes, sorry. And that bit.
Thank you. Okay, is there a seconder, please? Councillor Duckworth. Thank you. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the Chief Exec almost got off lightly there, didn't he? Really, Councillor Keane. But I'm sure he'll appreciate it anyway. Firstly, thank you for that, and I appreciate and understand why this has been brought forward, and particularly that this is the second extension that we're seeking for this PSPO. But I have just a few questions, only because it's focusing on this, and we all appreciate how important it is and how important this PSPO is in helping to keep, not just our open spaces clean, but, our beaches and the Blue Flag Awards that we enjoy and all of that. So the questions I have is effectively, whilst we're extending this, how successful is the PSPO and how do we measure that success to understand that it's worthwhile to extend it again? And also the report mentions fixed penalty notices that may be issued, and I appreciate, Councillor Keane, that you may not have this to hand right now, and I'm certainly not trying to put you on the spot, but I'd be interested to understand, although I understand that it's more of a deterrent that they're issued, not necessarily the first thing that our teams do when they're enforcing PSPOs or anything like that, but I'd be keen to understand how many fixed penalty notices are issued in relation to just this PSPO on an annual basis, just to understand, when all else fails, when we do that.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. Councillor Keane.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Pugh. I mean, I don't have numbers about the fixed penalty notices, but I'm sure we can get that information to you. And in the same vein, I don't have sort of figures about the success of it. What I do know is that the other year we did a survey of people around this PSPO, and this was where sort of we came to some of the agreement of where it was to be. And it has been working very well. The fact that we've been able to maintain our blue flag status and seaside awards for our beaches shows that, it's working, because part of that is about the cleanliness and dog control. So, yeah, as I say, I can try and get you figures around it, but I am sort of certain that it is successful. Thank you.
I don't know if Mr Geddes wanted to add to that in any way. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Pugh. In terms of a couple of the elements in the success of the measure of the application of this Public Spaces Protection Order, it's done via a number of ways. We have public consultation via the Community Safety Annual Survey, which elements of PSPO are covered in that. We also do a number of public-facing events around customer satisfaction. We found when we do reviews on the outcomes of the activities that we undertake, they seem to maintain a degree of stability. We also know that there can be a degree of underreporting as well, which is why we concentrate quite a lot of our resources based around public engagement. So putting out appropriate signage, putting out leaflets for people, particularly those who are visitors, around the parks and bays during the summertime. We also undertake a lot of our enforcement type activities, specifically based upon information that we get from elected members. The public themselves don't often report issues like dog fouling. They do come in with a degree of regularity, but they can't be compared with issues around fly tipping, as an example. So we undertake many activities around that. What we find, though, is a PSPO is around guidance and compliance. So if we have an area, as an example, where we've got increased issues around dog fouling or fly tipping or littering, etc., we'll send in a group of uniformed officers, and what we get is compliance on every single occasion, because people in uniform provide capable guardianship and therefore promote compliance. So our approach is to get as many people out in uniforms, in high vis, providing that visible presence at key times, at key locations throughout the year. One of the interesting elements that's come up more recently is our beach and coast PSPO officers, which are a really good and strong team. They're going to be realigning some of their activities throughout the winter months, and we've already started to table and look at some of the areas where we've got higher levels of dog fouling based upon reports from members, and those resources from that team will be allocated to some of those activities. So they're actually going to go out and undertake environmental reviews of that area, as other officers do, and we're going to design some specific events that we can go in if we do find that there are higher levels. So it's something that we constantly monitor. It's not something that we just revisit on an annual basis. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that very comprehensive response, Mr. Geddes.
I'm passionate about dog fouling.
And I know many residents are too. So, many residents are too, so that's good to hear. Members, any comments to make on this? No? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that the current PSPO is extended for a further 3 years until 2026 and to delegate any minor amendments of the PSPO to the Chief Executive. Do members agree? Agree. Thank you. So we move on to item 6, which is the health and safety policy. Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Leader. This report updates the Council's health and safety policy, which was presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in September for consideration and recommendation onto Cabinet. There has been a change to the content of this policy, which requires approval by the corporate management team as stated in the current policy. The reasons for the review are as follows. The Chief Executive endorsement signature needed updating, senior management restructure, corporate health and safety responsibility changes, corporate health and safety committee restructure, and legal compliance. And the legal compliance items include ensuring the policy complies with the latest health and safety legislation, regulations and standards relevant to the organisation and its location, the identification of any new legal requirements that have been introduced since the last policy review, and legislative updates to the management standards linked to the policy. So tonight, Cabinet is being asked to approve the health and safety, the updated health and safety policy. I move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Keane, thank you. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. When this came to overview and scrutiny, I think we pointed out a few minor anomalies in proofreading, and I noticed there's still a couple of oddities here, like, for example, there's 2 items 4.7. What I wanted to ask 3 questions about this. The first one is we've deleted a section that says the health and safety manager, this role is responsible for. We've got something later on that talks about the powers of the health and safety officer. I'm not sure whether that is intended to replace entirely what the role of the health and safety person is, and obviously Stuart isn't here to answer that directly, but I'm hoping somebody can just clarify that, because it feels like a gap now, looking at the way that it's set out. The second thing I wanted to ask was about the section on volunteers and how we're going to monitor the health and safety of our volunteers, who we increasingly rely on as our budgets shrink for some of the functions that we're involved in. And the third one was to try just to clarify in my own head, and apologies if this is just me, how or whether this relates in any way to members, or whether this is entirely a workplace employee-related policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I don't know if you want to deal with that, Mr. Yates. Councillor Yates, sorry.
No, I'm both Councillor Yates and Mr. Yates, so that's okay. Thank you for pointing out 4.7. Yes, that is an issue in the report. There is two sections called 4.7. So whatever the process is, we'll make sure that's corrected. The health and safety in relation to volunteers, 5.33. Can I ask you just to clarify what that question is again? Thanks.
I was just wondering how health and safety support for volunteers is going to be monitored. How are we going to measure what we're doing, monitor what we're doing, make sure that we're covering the volunteers we're relying on? Who are the volunteers that we're including in that? It might not be a question that can be answered immediately, I realise, but I'm just a bit concerned about how that's going to work out. It looks lovely on paper, but...
Thank you. So just to reassure you, the Council has regular key performance indicators. I don't know to hand what the process is around volunteers with those key performance indicators. If you can ping us an email on that specific point, we'll come back to you. On the question of members, so our involvement in members, this is to set like high-level strategies, review policy documents. This is one of them. We also have a review going to Cabinet CMT about a recent health and safety limited assurance from governance and audit. So we'll be reviewing that at a separate point. But if you want to come back briefly on this point.
I was thinking more about our own health and safety and the sort of thing that Stuart did the training on for us during induction and how this relates to that. Is that entirely separate or?
I think because he's not here tonight, yes. I'll happily come back to you in an email.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members. Any discussion on this item? So it's been moved that the Cabinet approve the health and safety policy. Do members agree? Agree. Thank you. And we move on to item 7, which is the draft corporate plan, which is me. The Council's previous corporate statement, which was approved by Council in 2019, has now reached the end of its 4-year cycle and is due for renewal. The report in front of Cabinet this evening proposes a new corporate plan which intends to set the direction of travel for the Council over the next 4 years. Having a clearly defined plan is essential to support the Council to work towards achieving our longer-term aspirations for Thanet and to ensure that resources across the Council are focused on what matters most to local people. This item therefore follows on naturally from the proposed budget that we've discussed earlier in the agenda. The refreshed corporate plan proposes 5 new overarching priorities for the Council: to keep our district safe and clean, to deliver the housing we need, to protect our environment, to create a thriving place and to work efficiently for you. I believe these are clear statements and firmly reflect the feedback we receive from our constituents when they tell us that they want their streets to be clean, to be able to feel safe and to have thriving towns in the district. A 6-week consultation period is proposed to ensure that members of the local community and our key stakeholders have an opportunity to comment. A final corporate plan document will be prepared taking into account the feedback we received during this engagement. The plan will then be presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Panel for their consideration and then to Cabinet and full Council for formal approval and adoption. Having a clear and concise corporate plan will help us to ensure that the community and our stakeholders are aware of the work the Council is delivering and through regular reporting of our performance will have an oversight of the progress being made. For this to be as clear as it can be, I propose that further detail is added to the draft corporate plan prior to the public consultation to provide some specific and tangible examples of the work the Council will deliver over the next 4 years against each of the priority areas. So I therefore move that Cabinet approve the recommendations and that delegated authority be granted to the Chief Executive in consultation with myself to provide examples of the projects and activities that the Council will deliver within the draft corporate plan. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Alban. Thank you very much. And speaking under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. You've just answered one of my questions, which was, can we give some more examples? That's a really helpful idea. Thank you very much. The other thing I wanted to say was that in our little corner of the chamber, we're very pleased with the look of this. It looks to be exactly the kind of thing we would have wanted to see. And we wanted to know how members can best help with getting the message out and encouraging residents to respond to the consultation.
I think that's something that we'll want to do, and we'll want to spread that message through our channels to members. I don't know whether, Ms Thorpe, you want to come in on that, do you at all?
Yes, I can do, just to add some reassurance that we would absolutely be hoping. I'm very grateful for any support that councillors can give in terms of kind of broadening the reach of making sure that people are aware that this consultation is open and giving them an opportunity to get involved. We're linking this with our standard annual resident survey questions and with the budget, so it's going to be a bit of a bumper consultation, but we thought it was better to kind of, they all link really nicely together, so it was a good opportunity to do that. So yes, anything you can do to encourage more people to take part would be really, really gratefully received. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks for that, and thanks for your positive words from the green corner, as we might call it, on what we've got so far. And it is a collaborative process, and I'm very clear that the corporate plan should belong to the whole council. So we absolutely welcome input during the process, not just from residents, but particularly from councillors who will have an understanding of what the council can possibly do and what resources it has and how it might achieve these aims. So let's work together on it, and let's hopefully have something that when we do bring it to council, we can get a unanimous vote on, because I think that will be a good signal to the community.
Excellent, thank you, Leader.
Members, Councillor Alban.
I couldn't go on, mate, without saying anything. Does that include, would this include this going out to town councils and parish councils, I take it, so they can all have their say? I mean, it's really important on the work that we want to do across council involvement, so I think that's good. Thank you. It's shame.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think we all recognise, and we've talked recently, but I think we do need to say it, that the town and parish councils are key stakeholders, and we want to work with them better than we've done in the past, because I think we're all heading in the same direction, and I'm sure that parish councillors who are not district councillors would share most, if not all, of the objectives which are in this draft of the corporate plan, but we need to hear from them to make sure that we're all heading in the right direction. Anything else, members? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the draft corporate plan 2024-28 and the proposed 6-week public consultation beginning the week commencing the 30th of October, plus delegated authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with myself to provide examples of the projects and activities and incorporate them within the plan for consultation. Is that agreed, members? Agreed, thank you. That concludes the business of tonight's meeting. I declare the meeting closed at 7:31. Thank you everybody for attending. The live stream of the meeting will now end. Good evening.